Good evening, everybody. Thanks for coming aboard. Hi, Tom, Alesia,
Alesia.
Alesia, pronouncing that correctly. Appreciate you coming on board and talking about Dave Bancroft. Tom wrote the book. It's a long title. I like the beginning of the title, Beauty at Short. Dave Bancroft, the most unlikely Hall of Famer and his wild times in baseball's first century. He sent me a copy of the book in a PDF. I had it saved in my books on my iPhone, tablet, every place I have books saved. And it was there and I kept forgetting about it. And being the really great grandfather that I was, I had a granddaughter down here and she wanted to go shopping in Old Scottsdale. And it's only the third time we've done that in the last 18 months, I think. So I get bored with that pretty quick. So I went outside and said, I've got that book out there. And I started reading, and then I started getting cranky about, what do you mean I have to move? I'm comfortable. I'm reading a really good book. I was hooked on the book in 4 pages. I mean, it was one of those books. And so I spent, which is probably, I'm usually pretty busy with other things, that I actually got the book read in a week. And that's probably the fastest book I've read in a while, just that I got that hooked on the book. So thank you for coming to talk about it, because I enjoyed the book that much. So.
Dennis, I really appreciate hearing that. That's really nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
So, and for everybody who's on, I'll print this out later. We will have a drawing for one of you to win a copy of the book. So we'll do that later. And so that I'm not the bad guy on this, I'll have Tom pick a number between 1 and how many are on at that time, so he can be the bad guy instead of me. So yeah, okay. Let me do a quick introduction for those of you who didn't see his in the May issue of the Keltner Hot Corner. We had his get to know, and so I just printed some of the stuff out from there just as an intro on who Tom is. He's a 30-year resident of Madison, originally from near Chicago in Illinois, and his earliest, for Brewer fans on here, his earliest baseball memories were the Cubs, which, Mary, I know you appreciate as well. He's a career newspaper journalist as an entertainer writer. Much of his work is with the Wisconsin State Journal, but he also penned articles for major dailies in LA, Chicago, Houston, St. Louis, San Diego, Milwaukee, Indianapolis, Pittsburgh, Minneapolis, plus USA Today and other publications. He's recognized for his work winning the Musical Journalism Award, as well as being a finalist for that same award. His work can be enjoyed on his website, tomwriteturns.com. Tom, that's the easy part. Write is like writing, W-R-I-T-E, turns.com. I'll put that out on the chat later, with profiles of musicians of all sorts, actors, comics, some sports, concert reviews, and even some short fiction out there. So a lot of his work is out there. Tom had a busy 6 months publishing 2 books starting in November of last year. The first book was Then Garth Brooks Became Elvis, a country music writer's journey with the stars, 1985 to 2010. Is that 2010? Do I have a typo here? Yeah.
Yes, 2010.
Yeah. And Tom is also an accomplished long distance runner, having finished 35 marathons, including 5 Boston marathons. Typing, that's as close as I get to running a marathon. So, but quickly on your Garth Brooks book, I felt that the way that book sounded, it was something like Larry Ritter did, kind of taking the stories of people that you talked about and questioning and making it into dialogue of your stories. Is that basically what you did?
My background is in entertainment writing. That's what I did for a lot of years. What I found out from the time I went to Indiana University, when I first got there around 1985, I was listening to a country music station of all things, and they were playing different kind of country music. I started to enjoy that, and just in writing entertainment for so many years, after 35 years, I realized I pretty much had interviewed every single country music star that was alive during that period. So what I did was took snippets of interviews and put it all together into a book, different things, one-hit wonders, major stars. One of my favorite stories is actually a baseball one, and it is Tim McGraw. And Tim McGraw's father is Tug McGraw. And he tells Tim McGraw in 1995 told me the greatest story. He just said he did not know his dad was Tug McGraw until he was 18 years old. Right. He did not know that his dad was a major league pitcher. But then at the time, this was 1995, was when Tim McGraw was first a star. He was playing stadiums, and I said, "What does your dad think?" This was, of course, when Tug was alive. And he said, Tug loves it. He loves going on tour. He loves the whole thing. And I said that, it must be nice having your dad there. And he said, it's more like a big brother. He's more like a big brother. So he was, there were so many good quotes, so many fun quotes that I put those all together. That took a significantly shorter time than the Bancroft book. And we're talking about a very small publisher. I'm getting help from, 2 people in Chicago. And we thought that was going to be the one that hit. We thought a book about that quoted Garth Brooks. I happen to have interviewed Garth Brooks before he was Garth Brooks. I mean, this is in his early days. Before he was famous. And we thought that was going to take off, and it did before Christmas. It did very well. Then the sales just dropped off right after Christmas. I mean, completely dropped off, which just scared the heck out of us, because then here we come with a baseball book about an unknown Hall of Famer. We also know there's a glut of baseball. We are also scared to death because there may not be baseball, or there may not be baseball until June. There may not be baseball until July. And here we're coming with a baseball book. And we're facing, major publishers. And the most wonderful thing that's happened in the last 2.5 months since the Bancroft book has been released is that it's just gotten phenomenal reaction. The sales are about 3 times over what we've done with the Garth book, and it's just been a journey that is apparently going to keep going through the summer.
It's good. Yeah, I've enjoyed the book, so I'm glad to hear that. Let's. I went back and looked at our get to know. And in the Mayhot, that was in the Mayhot corner, you mentioned that one of your earliest baseball memories included Wausau's Athletic Park. Yes. So we're talking a small city, for those of you not from Wisconsin, to know basically the north central part of the state. What do you recall about that ballpark?
I still go up there, and it still has the same exterior, and that exterior is from the Works Progress Administration, 1936, late 1930s. And as a youth, that is where I had family. So I was able to see at a young age, we would come up. I lived just a couple miles from O'Hare Airport. To kind of give perspective, Wausau to us was a very small town, seemingly, when my family went up there, but my mom did grow up there. So my grandparents were there, and, obviously as a child, you don't realize how gorgeous this ballpark is, but certainly as an adult, going back there and seeing that field and the ballpark. They've also preserved it magnificently. And there's also not another ballpark. And it used to be obviously a minor league team, and then many cities have lost their minor league team. It's now in the college league, in the Northwoods League, but it hasn't lost any of its appeal. In fact, I think the new owners have done just a spectacular job with renovation while keeping the same look of the stadium. It is worth a trip. I think I've seen just about every stadium in Wisconsin, and athletic park is just magnificent. What a fun place to be.
Yeah.
Have
It's
you
been a
been
while
to
since I've
Carson
been up
Park?
there.
Yes, I have.
Yeah, because that's very
Uh,
similar to what you're describing.
Carson, yes. And also, there was, yes, I did a story where I went to all different parks, and Carson Park was one of them. And I just savored being, I love the Hank Aaron statue in front of the park. And yeah, definitely savored the atmosphere of that place.
Is that in Eau Claire?
Yes, it's the best part of Eau Claire, believe me.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
My
Yeah, I've been to
husband's from
both of
there,
them.
so.
Sure. Good. It's I went up there as I got my Mallards hat on. For those of us in Wisconsin, we're going to a Mallards game next month, so I'm getting prepared for it. And they're part of the Northwoods League. And the team took a busload of fans up there in the first couple of years. I was a host family, so I did a lot of those type of trips, and it was a fun trip. But that was a neat ballpark. So yeah, I wanted to hear more about that. So thank you. You also mentioned, one of the questions that I've started using in the last 6-7 months on the Get to Know, so I bring a time machine question. If you could go back in baseball for anything, and your response was you'd like to go back to see 1922 when in the year that Bancroft, his Giants won their second consecutive World Series, and he set and the still standing single season chances by a shortstop. Any particular occasion in that 1922 season you'd want to go back to?
Not a specific moment. It really would be any time. On social media, I get to see a lot of. There's a group that is dedicated to the Polo Grounds, and I think a trip there. Not where it is, obviously it's been knocked down for many years, and there is a marker there, but boy, every time I see pictures of that, I think, wow, that is what a neat sight that would be, to get to experience a game like that. And I one of the great things about where I grew up was I was a hop, skip, and a jump in terms of public transportation from Wrigley Field. I was literally 12 years old with two other 12-year-old friends, and we would go to Wrigley Field in the days, obviously, before lights. I mean, it used to be joked that Wrigley Field was the world's biggest daycare, and it was for us. That was no joke. We would just go to downtown. It of course costed very little money at the time. We're talking from about 1977 to 1982. The Cubs were terrible at the time. Crowds were small, but you could still, in the lobby or in the bowels of Wrigley Field, the opposing team still walked, up a staircase, and you could easily stick your hand out and, can I get an autograph? And I remember many a player signing for that. We also flipped chairs after the game, and they gave us free tickets. That was something that was done at Wrigley Field. So we did that. But my first game at Wrigley Field, I'm not sure if it was my first game, but I'm pretty sure. I would have been about 6 or 7 years old, and believe it or not, it happened to be the game that Milt Pappas came one pitch from a perfect game. He had a 3-2 count on a batter, 2 outs, top of the 9th, perfect game, 26 batters in a row, and the ump called ball 4.
Bruce Fleming, I believe.
Bruce Fleming. I was just going to say, I believe it was Bruce Fleming who called it ball.
Yeah.
Yes, Wisconsin's own. And he got the no-hitter. I sold 2 pieces of baseball memorabilia that I've super regretted in my life. And one of them was the Milt Pappas autographed copy of my dad's scorecard from Wrigley Field from that game. That was huge regret number one. Regret number two was my beautiful Satchel Paige autograph from when I was a child. That said best wishes. And it was PSA authorized and everything. Fortunately, very fortunately, I saved many other things and am the proud owner of an immaculate Jesse Owens autograph that is signed to me. And obviously because of my running background, I just absolutely love that. That's something that's framed in our house that I love looking at every day. So
Nice.
And if you could see behind me too, the obsession, and you know, I say that in good humor, and I wonder if Dave experienced the same thing too. When you do such a deep dive on one player, you know, you do have to have a little bit of sense of humor about it, because I mean, when I have a refrigerator magnet, and yes, I am the owner of a Dave Bancroft refrigerator magnet, you know, your deep dive maybe has gone a little too deep. Yes, behind me are 3 life-size Dave Bancroft cutouts. These are magnificent. I love this company. It's called Build Ahead. They were inexpensive. They came nicely packaged. And if you can see on my shoulder, these 2 of them are 6 feet. One of them is 4 feet where he's there. The one over here is a 6-foot cutout of him, and the slight irony being that Dave Bancroft, by all accounts, was either 5'8" or 5'9". So he looks like much more of a menacing hitter as a cutout in 2022 than he may have been 100 years ago in 1922. But he was a switch hitter too. And I loved what they called it then, a turnaround hitter. That's what they call it. That's what he was. It was suggested to him that he become a turnaround hitter. And that's just one of the things, you know, when you find out a lot of notes and you just keep yellowing and you find different stories. And it was one of the things also that I wanted to do with the book. If you notice, I hope it's a quick read, in part because I tried to almost have some vignettes and break it up very quickly, almost like keeping different stories going, and try to interest people that way, making sure that if, you know, you're kind of getting bogged down at some point, you're going to know that there's, you know, a new story coming very, very soon. And with Bancroft, I found just countless fun stories. And this is a book that ended up 10,000 pages were cut, or 10,000 pages. Let me check back. I'm not that wasn't that much of a deep dive. 10,000 words were cut from that I did to shorten it down, to get it to where maybe my interest was had 10,000 more words in it, but I thought for an audience it needed to be cut down. But it was an experience, and I Dennis, if you want me to explain one of the of just how the process went.
My first question was, I like that process a lot, but the first one was, or maybe this is where you're going, is what led you to write about Dave Bancroft? After all, he's the most unlikely Hall of Famer. So you decided to write a book about a very unlikely Hall of Famer, which, you know, I read those, and that's what we had in in the get to know, and I thought, yeah, why would you do that? So, and then the process would be great.
Yeah, it goes back 10 years, and my wife is on this Zoom, and she'll verify, and the story is that we were, she had a book. We were vacationing in northern Wisconsin, far northern Wisconsin. This group will know we were along the edge of Lake Superior, so we're up there, and a pretty remote spot. The nearest real city was Superior, Duluth Superior, and obviously we looked in there. What's there that we might be interested in? And there was one line that said, Hall of Famer Dave Bancroft is buried in Superior. Now, this group, the Wisconsin group, was going to know, all right, Superior and baseball, that's unusual. Superior is an extremely cold place. It's not great hockey, lots of hockey players, lots of football players, not a lot of baseball players emerging from Superior. And that's just the weather, of course, makes sense that would be the case. But why was there a Hall of Famer there who I had not heard of? We went to the cemetery. The gravestones were in the ground. It just said Dave Bancroft, his birth date, his death, and it just said husband next to it, 1 foot over. And we're talking about an in-ground funeral stone of no more than 2 feet by 1 foot. Very small. Next to it was his wife, Edna. And her stone said essentially the same thing, except at the end, just wife. And I was just astounded by that there wasn't any mention. When I talked to the person at the cemetery, they said, yeah, we occasionally will, or, we'll, when we do a tour, it will be mentioned along with a handful of other people who are in there. But the more I kept reading, and it began as a microfilm search, and that is an arduous process. That is a monotonous, grueling. You just keep those reels going, and you're trying to find something. And I found a lot of things, and I had a lot of things, and I knew I would write something someday. I thought it would be a newspaper article, and I did write one of those along the way, but there was much more when I was able to go to newspapers.com, newspaperarchives.com, and one other newspaper site. What it allowed me to do was type in the name Dave Bancroft and read literally every single article of anywhere around the country that his name appeared. And from that, pretty much right away, I realized, wow, this is, and I looked back, realized that this was quite a story, quite a spectacular story of a guy who overcame being caught and being considered not a very good player in the minor leagues, barely making it to the major leagues, and then emerging 16 years later with a Hall of Fame career. And even how he got in to the Hall of Fame was just amazing. The people he met along the way were just amazing. So the research process really was, I'm gonna reach over to grab what is just one of 3 taped. This is duct tape, because these things went down. This is the smallest of 3. Every single one of these is in a newspaper article from Bancroft. It is broken down by literally from his birth to 1 year after his death. And then I did decide to go chronologically for a sense of that was the way I felt that it was best to tell the story. go through that and find those fun stories. They just kept coming and coming. And when I keep saying them now that well, what are these unbelievable stories? But it goes from everything from he played in he made the last out of the shortest game, 9-inning game in Major League history. The shortest game in Major League history lasted 51 minutes. And Dave, and was also at the end of the season. And it appears that both players on both sides wanted the game to be done as quickly as possible. They didn't seem to have as much interest in it, which is very unusual because Dave Bancroft, if you could say one thing about him, was that he was a very hard-nosed, very dedicated player. In this case, though, he swung at the first pitch, made the last out in 51 minutes, which broke the record by 4 minutes. There was everything from that to the absolute wonderfulness of him rising, making it to the Phillies as a rookie, the Philadelphia Phillies, 1915, going to the World Series. In his first year, his teammates, the pitcher of that team was Grover Cleveland Alexander. His first hit was against Christy Mathewson in a game that pitted Christy Mathewson against Grover Cleveland Alexander. Two guys who eventually combined wins were 750 wins in their career. Then Bancroft's career from there, he is hitting, it was the dead ball area with Philadelphia. The numbers aren't as good. He's in the Hall of Fame, but he's not on the Phillies Wall of Fame. And I've been shot down many a time on a Philadelphia Phillies website, trying to rouse up support for him to be included in the Wall of Fame, and pointing out that he scored the only Phillies, he led the Phillies to the only victory they had in a World Series until 1980, but to no use. The Phillies fans, boy, they are tough. Yeah, they're tough even on me when I come in, waving a white flag and enjoying it. So there's the research.
Was his name? Is his middle name? Was his middle name Santa Claus or something? Philly fans are pretty tough. So, or Philadelphia fans. So.
They are. That is. I learned that was definitely the case. And although they, one of the nice things too was that that I enjoyed about getting to, and I've been on a lot of different social media sites and talked to a lot of different people, is that they embrace the knowledge, they enjoy the stories, they know what they're talking about, and arguing whether Dave Bancroft should be, from his 4.5 years at the Phillies, whether that deserves to be on the Wall of Fame is a fun argument. He then went from the Phillies to the New York Giants, and that certainly, anytime you get to that New York market, and you can see it in the news coverage, it was really good, and he was definitely acknowledged as a star shortstop in the major leagues. But then in 1920, he was, John McGraw wanted him. And if John McGraw wants him, he got the money to get him. And so 1920 to 1923, he was John McGraw's shortstop. And they were great friends. As crusty as John McGraw was, one of the books that was key to giving a little bit of insight was actually by John McGraw's wife from the early 1950s. And she describes it as that both of them enjoyed each other's company and enjoyed, laughed as much as they did when they were in each other's company, as they did with just about anyone. Which is very neat. And there was no doubt in 1932, when John McGraw died, 1933, February of 1933, that Dave Bancroft, that was going to be his ticket to getting to be a manager again. Dave Bancroft was a player manager for the Boston Braves for 4 years, and the ties to John McGraw were the chance to definitely be a manager again. And John McGraw's death definitely put a curb into that, made that difficult.
Yeah, I thought reading the book that it was interesting that I thought the same thing. John McGraw is not thought of as he's considered a great manager and all, but as a nice person. Not a lot of people think that of him. And I thought that I got the feeling Dave Bancroft was really hard-nosed, as you said, but really a good guy. And that the two of them got along so well, I thought was very interesting.
They were, magnificent. It really shook up Bancroft. That was one of the things. And, this is one of the things about reading so much of newspaper coverage of baseball, or, I imagine of any subject, newspaper coverage from 1900 until through 1940. You didn't have bylines in most cases. I could tell when Bancroft was not being quoted correctly that it was just being written by another writer. You have to be very careful about what you accept as truth. And the name of the book is Beauty at Short, and he is nicknamed Beauty. And if you go on the Baseball Hall of Fame site right now, there is a pull quote in very large type at the bottom from a New York paper that says he got the nickname because he said it while he was in the minor leagues in Portland, Oregon. For every time there'd be a good pitch, he'd say, "That's a beaut," or "Beauty," or somebody makes a nice play, he'd say "Beauty." And he said they called that. And I've read quite a few Portland and every other newspaper. There is no mention of that nickname until 5 years later. And it first appeared when he went to New York. And yes, because he was saying that, some of the media in New York picked that up, and others didn't think the nickname would last. You saw some other newspapers that there. So the one source of that story was a pretty prominent New York writer, and yet his story isn't true. I mean, Bancroft was never called Beauty until 1921, and that was pretty exclusive to New York. And the name, I believe, is stuck. The nickname stuck as years went on because of the amusement of calling him Beauty. There's a wonderful audio interview with Travis Jackson. And Travis Jackson was pretty old at that time. Travis Jackson was the player who replaced Bancroft at shortstop with the New York Giants and then became a Hall of Famer himself. And the interviewer brings up Dave Bancroft and says Beauty. And even Travis Jackson hesitates for a second. You can hear it on the audio, and it's like, yeah, it was not used. Far more often he was called Banny. I think that it's the amusement of the fact that he had the nickname Beauty was definitely used after his career. I also think it's something that maybe the Hall of Fame clung on to maybe spice up his own background or provide something that was certainly unique. And it's definitely a different nickname. So that is, you had to be careful of material that you use. And like I said, the Baseball Hall of Fame is using that as a large quote right now, saying it was, from Portland. And in that same article that they're quoting, it has some of the craziest stories of, his father, seeing Dave throw the baseball at age 2. And I just thought, these are made up stories. These are not truth. So you really do have to be, there were a number of articles, and there were certain writers, beat writers at that time that I knew to be able to rely on a little better than others. Obviously, there were multiple papers. In New York, you had so many. Then he also ended his playing career with the Brooklyn Robins for 2 seasons. So he went back to New York. He had a wonderful, I really wish that the Gold Glove existed from 1915 on. How I wish there was an All-Star game from 1915 on, because I could say, well, he was a 10-time, 12-time Gold Glover, and he played in 10 or 11 All-Star games, and he would have if those were the cases. Unfortunately, there was not. There will be a Dave Bancroft Day on July 1st in Sioux City, Iowa, which is his hometown. That is where he was born, and where he went to high school. He spent then his adult life in Superior. And during Dave Bancroft Day, which will include a part of a museum exhibit that lasts the month of June, at the Sioux City Explorers game, which is an independent league team, it will be Dave Bancroft night. And given away to every person who comes through the door will be a Dave Bancroft t-shirt. The front of it will be Explorers. The back will say Bancroft. And the media person for the Sioux City Explorers said, what was his number? And I said, well, they didn't have numbers. I said, go with number 1. I said, you're fine. Dave Bancroft never had a number. So it's hard to argue. There's, when I looked, I had to look at what Ken Keltner's lifetime batting average was. And yeah, it's only 4 or 5 points behind Dave Bancroft. At the same time, I think you got to look at World Series and what he did to a team and the number of games he played. There's also one of the things that I found too that I was fascinated by was how a story for a player like Bancroft, who had really extremely little written about him, and often the same stories told over and over in the books of Hall of Famers in Cooperstown, or that. And one of the stories that gets told over and over is John McGraw marveling in 1922, 1923, that Bancroft played an entire game with pneumonia. The story is true. And McGraw just found that magnificent and amazing. The truth of the story, though, is that Dave Bancroft then spent the next 23 days in the hospital. He then, after he was released from the hospital, from a game that he did play 9 innings with pneumonia, does not remember the game at all, spent 23 days in a hospital, then spent 2 or 3 weeks in a New Hampshire resort in order to get away and recover with his wife. And, but the only story is told is McGraw just, I can't believe it. He did it. What a player. He was out there 9 innings, with pneumonia, and he actually had a pretty good game. But again, the truth of the matter is no, that it was pretty devastating to him. The other thing too, was he just kept finding stories, and I found an amazing love story between his wife and him. There's no doubt about that. In 1909, Dave Bancroft had been cut by 2 minor league teams at a time pretty much when, if you were a good player, you could make it. There were 300 plus minor league teams, and this is the lowest level, and he was cut by 2 of them. One of them was the Waterloo Lulus. I love that name. And they didn't like him. He made an error a second time, and the coach was too quick. He cut him. He went to Duluth, but Duluth, after a couple games, cut him. He got the Superior only because the Superior coach, who was a teammate of Ty Cobb's, so a major league player who was coaching in the minor leagues, he went then to see a game of Duluth, and Bancroft happened to play very well on that game, even though Duluth eventually cut him pretty quickly, and he signed Bancroft. Bancroft then started the first of 3 seasons in the lowest part of minor league baseball in Superior, Wisconsin. And in the first season, he met his wife. She was 18, he was 19. They married there, and he had no bigger fan than her. She appeared at all times, always as Mrs. Dave Bancroft, never as Edna Bancroft. In fact, that continued even when Dave made the Hall of Fame, that she is Mrs. Dave Bancroft, not Edna Bancroft. But anyway, one of the heartbreaking parts of it that I did not know as the story was going along, in the middle of, after winning the World Series, Edna Bancroft gave birth off season to their first child. The girl died 16 days after birth. I went in not knowing that because the only article I had seen that had even referenced, or actually just about everything references that the family was childless, and that was not the case. They did have a daughter, and it's crushing because you saw in several newspapers Dave talking about having a daughter, and then not a word in terms of what had happened, how the girl died. Obviously, there were infancy rates that were, that were low. It was, the early 1920s, which is too bad because the couple just loved kids. That is one of the things that I uncovered. One of my favorite pictures in the whole book is him holding up a child while he was coaching the Boston Braves, and it was a boys club that was there, and he hoisted up the little boy, and he's just looking up as proud as it can be. And so many photos from that era are canned. There's not much emotion in the faces. That's why the cover photo was a marvel. I know that you probably cannot see it very well. That is Dave jumping at the top. We colorized him. That's with the New York Giants. He's smiling in that one. To get a photo of a smiling old-time baseball player, I learned was impossible. When I found this, I thought I had uncovered a piece of gold after digging for about 5 years. It was found, I found it on a Hall of Fame site, but the Hall of Fame does not have the photo in its archives, but one of their photo archivists was willing to find it, that this was part of a photo that was part of an exhibit that they had. So it wasn't part of their collection, although they did have partial ownership of it. And they did approve, which is one of the wonderful things, the support different baseball groups did. And the Hall of Fame in particular gave the rights to that photo to be used on the cover. And he's smiling. But it's not just that photo too. It's also the, like I said, there's the one where he's smiling with the child. There are other photos. I have coming tomorrow, literally coming tomorrow, a 1909 copy of the Sioux City, Iowa high school yearbook. Yes, I got one. I got one. And it includes the original photo of this, which is his 1908 high school team. And of course, they're all frowning in this one. They're not going to be smiling in this one. And he's in the photo. It was a deep dive, but finding the photos and finding the things that were interesting really kept spurring everything. I was enjoying, and maybe Dave feels the same way. Sometimes it's very scary to read your own book after it's been printed, because you can't change that sentence, or you can't change that paragraph, or you can't change that. Boy, that's a terrible transition, or something like that, or heavens forbid, a mistake, that and there is one in there, but I'll let you guys see if you can find it. We're definitely changing it soon. It's not a big one, but it's something that does. So sometimes it is hard to read your own book and see it. But today, one of the things, and before this, and I've done some podcasts and some other interviews, is definitely I looked through it again, and I really do enjoy the stories. Everything that had happened to him, whether it was, coaching in the women's professional league. And one of the things that somebody wrote that I appreciated the most of a review was that, he was in 4 World Series, but the 3 World Series, New York Giants, New York Yankees, 1920, 1921, 1922, a lot's been written about that. And I didn't feel I needed to go that deep, but I found that I had some new stuff from Dave Bancroft's angle. And one of them being that before the 1922 series started, this is against Babe Ruth and the New York Yankees. This is 1 year before the house that Ruth built was built. And he was with the team in a neighborhood, and as captain of the team, which he was for the 3 years with John McGraw, he had to step out. They were eating dinner before the World Series in a neighborhood restaurant, and people in the neighborhood started to gather because they realized their heroes, the New York Giants, were eating at this restaurant. And Dave was the one who was sent out there to give them a cheer and to thank them about it. And it's just it's a wonderful journey that can be had, and stories that go from those kind of heights to bus rides when he was coaching a minor league team in St. Cloud, Minnesota, 1946 minor leagues. Manager drove the bus. You didn't have an assistant, and so Dave was behind the wheel. And believe me, he wasn't too happy about it, and he wanted to get back into the major leagues, and it never did happen. At the same time, one of the things that I admire about him was after that, late in his career, then the pivot then was an offer from a former teammate, Max Carey, who was deeply involved with the Women's Professional Baseball League, said, come coach with us. You know, we'll pay more than the minor leagues. And Dave did. 3.5 seasons he was with the Women's Professional League. And he was not the Tom Hanks character. Big difference. Tom Hanks character in A League of Their Own. He was not. He was very serious. And I went into this not wanting to make him a better person than he was. If I had found something where there was deep racism or sexism, you know, I was ready for that. You know, I was ready for having something negative about his life or something that was sordid, and I never found that. And I really enjoyed the fact, and one of the things, there are a number of people who really still study and enjoyed that fact that there was an 11-year professional women's baseball league. And they loved the fact that Dave Bancroft was there. Here was a guy who really took it seriously. He also did the tour in I believe it was 1949, 2 months. They toured, more than 2 months. He toured with an American women's baseball team in Central America and South America. They were about in 10 or 11 different countries, and he just kept going. And there are stories of that in there. And one of the things I wanted to do was not with the person, I think I started this with mentioning one of the things that person had written. It might have been on Goodreads, I can't remember. But like I said, I appreciated it. And he said that I covered the entire career. And I like that, because that's what I wanted to do, because the New York highlights are right there. The 1921 series is in the book, Great Moments in New York Sports History. If it's in the book, Great Moments in New York Sports History, topic's been covered. I mean, I'm going to give you a different angle on it to a degree, but I'm also going to move on to other sorts of his life that are interesting, the people that he met. And there's not a baseball player that he didn't you know, come in contact with. It's startling, because he also did get to tour England in 1924 with a number of the stars. Then it comes to Babe Ruth. And what it is, I'm going to hold up a picture. Dave is the photographer of this picture of Babe Ruth. Behind Babe Ruth is Babe Ruth's wife. And behind Babe Ruth's wife is Edna Bancroft. And believe me, this is hardly the most outrageous photo that was taken by Dave on that day. And now I think this was the most, well, actually there were two. This is Babe, they're holding a Babe, Edna Bancroft, Dave's wife, Babe Ruth's wife, are holding a teddy bear in front of Babe Ruth's crotch. Babe Ruth's head is sticking through a ballet dancer's outfit, and his face is sticking out. It's described when it was sold as the most provocative and outrageous Babe Ruth photo that there is. There's another photo, and it's from Hot Springs. Now, Babe Ruth spent a lot of time there. Dave did not, but in 1921 or 21 or 22, he did. The other one has photo, and it is in the book, has Dave Bancroft's wife with her hand on completely over the front of Babe Ruth's wife's dress and clutching her breast. Well, Babe Ruth is in the front. I mean, these are just the craziest photos, and then again, the craziest experiences that you run across these days are in terms of, when you do a deep dive on a player, and then at the same time you think, wow, these are some great stories. And it even goes to Dizzy Dean claims and is quoted, the only time Dizzy Dean is quoted very specifically in his earlier days about how he got the nickname Dizzy. He says Dave Bancroft was the third base coach when he was 16 years old, pitching in a spring training game in San Antonio, Texas. And Dizzy Dean was mowing down Dave's Boston team. And Bancroft looked at his players and said, he's making you guys dizzy, and Dizzy Dean, very confident at 16, said, basically like, and I'm going to keep doing it, and he said, though, that Dave Bancroft is the reason why I'm, is the name Dizzy stuck. Whether that story is true, I believe it. Like I said, keep reading a number of different stories, trying to make sure, is that true or not? And again, that's a game you have to play when you do a real deep dive, whether it's an article or a book about an old-time player. If you're going to rely solely on the newspaper clippings, and with Dave Bancroft, there's no audio interview. There's nothing there. I have never heard his voice. I have gone through everything I could try to find on YouTube, and yes, I've found some clips, but there's nothing that is close up. There is apparently a movie with Babe Ruth, obviously some short movie, but obviously it's lost to history, so you can't find it. So you do have to be pretty careful about what you choose. But you quote what's right there, and sometimes the players, you can tell the difference between a writer putting words in their mouth and a time when it's an actual quote. And I think that's where my newspaper background really helped. I think I could tell when a person is speaking, as opposed to someone trying to type words into the mouth of the person that they're writing about.
Tom, we got to, first off, if you see this passion here about, about for this player, it goes throughout the book. So thank you. This has been, I've got a whole list of questions. I'm thinking, oh, he hasn't missed one of the questions yet. So that's great. So you've been wonderful. So thank you. We got some comments out here. Dave Heller mentioned that he only has a replicable baseball card. He doesn't have any full-size cutouts. So you're one-upping him there, Tom.
Sorry, I own three.
Yeah. Dixie's got a few questions or comments out here. According to Retro Sheet, the most at bats Bancroft had was against Burleigh Grimes, 181, and he hit 293.
A great story.
Yeah.
Keep
His
going.
best average with the most at bats was against, just listen to the names in this, is Epa Rixey, where he had 120 at bats, hit 375. His worst average was versus Pete Alexander, 208 and 149 at bats. Would you care to elaborate at all on that?
No, those are magnificent stats. I love that. Yeah. Well, first of all, I'll say most people hit 208 against Grover Alexander.
Yeah.
To be honest, that's the first time I've seen that Epa Rixey comment, which is fantastic because, obviously he's a magnificent pitcher. To me, one of the things that really jumps out at that was he was hunting buddies with Burleigh Grimes. Dave was, and this leads then into one of the things that I want to kind of clarify, because Bancroft is constantly and incorrectly mentioned as being in the Hall of Fame strictly because he is Frankie Frisch's pal. or was. It's not true. It isn't true. And let's then bring up Burley Grimes. Burley Grimes, spitballer for a number of years, was a good friend of Dave's because they loved to hunt. Let me tell you who didn't love the hunt and who lived a very different life growing up and who is known as the Fordham Flash because of Fordham University, is Frank Frisch. One of the things that definitely came out of a deep dive of looking at article after article after article after article about Dave Bancroft and Frank Frisch at the time they were teammates is they were wonderful teammates, but they were not good friends. They got along, they weren't enemies at all, but there is no indication that they hung out. In fact, it was very much noted that that they were not friends. I literally have a New York Daily News article that does say that describes them as, as good teammates and not good friends, or not close friends. Now, fast forward or push ahead to 1969. Frankie Frisch joined the Hall of Fame Veteran Committee, quickly moved into a powerful spot in that.
I'll be right back, guys.
And one of the things with that is in the first year Frisch was running it, the second year, the third year, Bancroft didn't make it in. And Bancroft had better credentials. There are certainly Frisch was favoring his Cardinals teammates, and he did that in the year that Bancroft got in. The thing with it is what you have to look at in 1971 is a fascinating who else was on that Veterans Committee in 1971. And it included a sports writer named Dan Daniels. Dan Daniels was a Bancroft friend from the time he was a New York Giant all the way until, just a couple years before the Veterans Committee got together. They were meeting in New York, and having dinner there with their wives in New York. So he was very close friends with one of the three sports writers that was on the 12-person committee. The committee also included a teammate, Bill Terry, of Bancroft's, and he's often mentioned as, they point at Frisch and Bill Terry's influence, and certainly they knew how good he was, but not enough to be like, we're going to carry a friend into the Hall of Fame. The weird thing about 1971 is Yogi Berra and Early Wynn both were first-year people on the ballot, and for reasons that I have no idea, didn't make it on the first ballot. Both were obvious first ballot picks, but the writers didn't pick them. That meant no one was going in 1971 until the Veterans Committee met, and they ended up with 6 picks and George Weiss, the Yankees official. Bancroft was one of the 6. There are far closer St. Louis Cardinal friends of Frankie Frisch than Bancroft. What also got him in was, what really got Dave Bancroft into the Hall of Fame was not just Frankie Frisch, but was the entire 12-person committee. 2 members changed from the year before to that, and that made the difference. Bill Terry joined, and the other person was Wade Hoyt. Wade Hoyt was the person who pitched in the final game of the 1922 World Series, threw a wonderful game, but one run was scored. That run was by Dave Bancroft. Charlie Gehringer was on the committee. Charlie Gehringer is going to know who is a very good infielder from that era and recognize that. There were a number of others. And then you have some of the other Baseball Hall of Fame executives and people like that. And he got in. One of the magnificent things that about that induction group, and yes, 6 is a lot for the Veterans Committee. Was it too much? Yeah. Could I argue here for the next 20 minutes about how I would rank the 6 and how Dave would have still made it in? Yes, but I'm not going to do that. Instead, there are 500 bats, and probably some of you have seen every year there's an induction. There's a Hall of Fame bat. There are 500 of them made because of my obsession, which is what it is. I have 5 of them. So 495 of them to go, and I own every single one of the bats from that day in January or August 9th, 1971. The biggest deal about this bat or this induction group is comes not at the top where Dave's signature is. It's at the bottom, and that is where Satchel Paige is inducted, and Satchel Paige gave a wonderful speech on that. It also, one of the stories in the book, and it's one of the stories that opens the book, and that is Dave Bancroft is a 12-year-old in Sioux City, Iowa. His team won the Little League championship in that city, and sitting next to him in the team picture of 1903 is a black teammate, a black 12-year-old teammate, and his name, and I was able to track down what his future was. Dave Bancroft never had a black teammate until 1959 when he played in a old timers game at Yankee Stadium, and Dave was 68 years old, and playing infield was a relatively recently retired Jackie Robinson. So we're talking about a amazing period of it. And I think Dave Heller probably understands this too. And I'm sorry if I keep mentioning you, Dave, but I think you could understand this too. And I think you probably ran into it too, was how, wow, when you do a deep dive on these older players, the racism is horrific. Because it's clear, boy, Dave Bancroft knew. He knew there were very good black players, and to the point where he saw Oscar Charleston and a black team play in Los Angeles. And again, it's one of the hundreds of stories in the book, and how Dave Bancroft knew and commented on the fact that light-skinned Cuban players were allowed in and dark-skinned were not. And the sort of mystery of that. He also played for managers who wanted to bring in dark-skinned players, and that included John McGraw, and in minor leagues too. His Portland manager did, and they were not, boy, were they were taken down by other owners. I mean, it was nope, no way. And unfortunately, you also had Kennesaw Landis for in the commissioner's seat, and for a number of years. It's a remarkable amount of racism that was faced throughout his career, among for others. It extends also to Native Americans too. But that is why, again, I do love the fact that he went in with Satchel Paige. Satchel Paige's speech at that induction ceremony is wonderful. Again, Satchel had a sense of humor at the same time. You know, you could read between the lines that he was taking some digs at society and baseball in particular for their color line.
Yeah. Before we get too much further, let me do the drawing on the book before I forget about it.
I was going to do a drum roll.
Drum roll. Well, somebody go ahead, do the drum roll. So can you pick a number between 1 and 8?
4.
4.
Yes.
You've only said his name how many times tonight? Dave Heller, congratulations.
Hey, Tom, I don't know if you read Joe Posnanski at all.
Yes.
But just I'd never heard of Dave Bancroft until the meeting came up, and so I was curious. I was going to join no matter what. And then while I was reading Joe Posnanski's thing on the Hall of Fame, he actually mentioned him and the story about how the Veterans Committee was letting in all these guys and the writers weren't letting anybody in. And then you mentioned the Frankie Frisch connection there, and then at least it was his take that Frankie Frisch was getting all of his old buddies in, and Travis Jackson was one of the guys too, because, you know, their war numbers and their numbers. And again, I don't think war is appropriate for early in the 1900s anyway, but like he really made a point of saying that Frankie Frisch got in all these guys and Dave Bancroft was one of the people on the list. And it just kind of jumped out at me because we had the meeting coming up. So I don't know if you read it or not.
Oh, yeah, I did. And the irony of that, and it's one of the things that didn't interest me, was going into a numbers game. Others can do that better than I could. There's no doubt. I can get at the personalities. I can get at the motivations. Others can analyze the analytics. SABR is wonderful at that. And they're also wonderful at research too. But I didn't want to play an analytics game. But I will tell one story, and I'm going to end it at this, is one of these wonderful life-size Dave Bancrofts is being held together by a honking big Bill James book right now. And the irony is not lost on me that, you know, Bill James he's been far meaner to other players. He hasn't been a champion of Dave Bancroft's, and I understand that. And I admire, you know, Bill James. But you know, that was the book. You know, that's a lot of numbers.
Sure.
You know, I don't make baseball. You know, then why don't we then have the credentials that you need to get into the Hall of Fame by your war numbers? You know, it comes there. You know, Dave Heller wrote on here, and thank you. He wrote, great idea for a book. Your passion is evident. I think there's no doubt if you don't have the passion, you're not going to reach the finish line on a person like this. He asked, when doing your research, what was your wow moment? There wasn't, you know, there wasn't a wow moment one. There was, and the only reason I believed in it, in one of the most satisfying things about the fact that in 2.5 months it's selling, and is that there were dozens and dozens and dozens of wow moments. And I'm looking down to see if my wife is on this, still listening. And like I said, she'd wake up in the morning. I went to bed sometimes at 5:30 in the morning after doing research for 15 hours, 16 hours. You know, I'd stretch, don't worry. I mean, you know, eyes were pretty bucked, but you know, she'd get up and I'd be telling a story right away that, oh, you won't believe this story, and you won't believe that story. And one of the things I have, when there is a wow, and this is my favorite piece of Bancroft memorabilia that I own. This is, and I know this is very hard to see. It's going to be one of the main things in the museum exhibit. The museum exhibit will be at the Sioux City Public Museum in the month of June. In July and August and September, it will be in Superior at the Douglas County Museum. This is the actual program for a testimonial dinner for Dave Bancroft after they won in Superior, Wisconsin, in November of 1921, after they won the World Series. He had a great World Series. And on the inside, I keep it that this is the front. This is the actual copy of it. But on the inside are, it's a meat and potatoes menu, but the songs, the skits, and each of the food items was described: sweet potatoes, fruit salad crushed like the New York Yankees. I love that line. Homemade pickles, pickled like Banny pickles the ball. Really stretching on that description there. But when Dave Bancroft and his wife Edna got off the train in November 3rd, 1921 in Superior, Wisconsin, school was stopped that day at 1:30 in the afternoon to greet him at the train station. At that time, there were about 40,000 people that lived in Superior. The public came out and had an impromptu parade for Dave from the train station to, at that time, they stayed at a hotel, even though he did have a residence, and then where they did live, but he went to the hotel on this particular night. And you have police, fire, just bands, and the descriptions, once again, the newspaper accounts range from 4,000 to another one that screams a headline that 10,000 people came there. But that was a moment that I don't even think Superior, Wisconsin realizes. They will, though. they will after the summer, of how much they really did embrace him 101 years ago, 100 years ago, when he won the Sunday championship.
Can I ask Susan a quick question here? Is he kidding when he says he wants all 500 bats?
Oh my God.
Yes,
Every day I come home from work and there's another box out on the front porch. And I think, what have we got now? So I don't think he's kidding. I think we're going to have a bat room.
I do own the Dave Bancroft pamphlet, and this was written by Dave Bancroft. Stores gave this out. It's how to play infield. It's not. It makes sense. He was a magnificent fielder. I mean, really, there is quote after quote after quote. But what I just love about these pamphlets is it has a picture of him batting. The pamphlet has nothing about batting on it. And then, yes, when she talks about weird things that come, and Dave Bancroft with Harpo Marx is what we have here. And since I'm pretty much the only Bancroft zealot right now that there is, this is Earl Smith. Earl Smith is notorious in the book. Earl Smith is the villain. Earl Smith, when you mention Dave Bancroft, gets the kind of sound, because Earl Smith in 1927, when Dave Bancroft was playing for the managing and playing for the Boston Braves, Earl Smith, as Dave crossed home plate, Dave stopped to complain that Earl Smith had thrown a baseball at his head as he was going to first base earlier on a walk. Earl Smith responded with taking his catcher's gloved hand and belting Bancroft, knocking him unconscious. And everybody, even the Pittsburgh press, just went at Earl Smith. He was sued by Bancroft. Eventually it was stopped because Major League Baseball asked him to stop, because every city that Bancroft played in, Earl Smith was afraid of being served court papers. But anyway, in the book is the photo. The legs sticking out are Dave's. And it works in the way this was cropped, but what's sad about it, or what I wish, if this was a bigger book, standing off to the side and looking like, uh-oh. And Earl Smith was always a dirty player. You'd spit on people's legs as well. He was a catcher, but I think he knew he blew it, and he's standing right about here where it's at. But that's Dave Bancroft. Yes, his legs sticking out. He was knocked unconscious and returned there. So, but yes, when my wife talks about things that come in the mail, this is a reproduction Earl Smith card. Yesterday, for some reason, I was in a bidding war on eBay. Yeah, maybe I was teaching a class and maybe I wasn't in middle school. Yes, I was teaching a class. They were reading, which is independent reading time that started. I think I was figuring I would get the one Earl Smith autograph that is out there. We're not talking a lot of money. It was $20. And I thought, fair enough, I can, all right. And then it jumped to 25 and I got in a bidding war with somebody and lost. And I thought, who else? I have no idea who that person is, but somebody out there paid $57 for an Earl Smith autograph. And I got beaten for that. But yes, no, I do have the bat. This is the glove of Maury Arnovich. Maury Arnovich is the only other Major League Baseball player out of Superior, Wisconsin. He's renowned for also being one of the first Jewish star players in the major leagues. He was an all-star. His career was derailed by World War II, by going to service in World War II. This is his glove. Dave helped him after, guided him in the minor leagues, was very much encouraging to get him signed. And Maury does support, acknowledge the fact that Dave Bancroft helped his career. And so, yes, and I mean, this is where I thought, even I looked at this and thought, I don't know, maybe I do need to get a grip a little on my Bancroft memorabilia, but I do have then Maury's glove that comes across. And a number of other items that will pop up. Yes, the baseball cards, but believe me, I have been outbid by many more things. But again, and my wife knows this too, because I warned her beforehand, because we've had rain here. The 1909 Sioux City, Iowa high school yearbook will be arriving at this house. Now, what does someone pay for the 1909? You'd be surprised what's out there. There is a person in California who collects yearbooks of famous people. The minute Dave Bancroft became a Hall of Famer, his memorabilia shot up. And he originally said that he had one for me, and we agreed on a price of probably about $90. And he then sent me, he said he couldn't find it. And then just a couple months later, he just sent me an email and said, I've got a copy. And we agreed on a much cheaper price, and that will be coming tomorrow. I wish I could hold it up right now, because I think that I'm looking forward to taking that to Sioux City for the Public Museum, along with the one of the strange things is that now, because what I've done with the Bancrofts behind me is they no longer fold. So I am going to be in a car the day after my last day of school, which is June 3rd for us, on my way to Sioux City Public Museum. But in the back seat will be full 6-foot Dave Bancrofts. I can't wait for the expressions on people's faces as I'm driving. It's about a 6-hour drive for me. I'm in Madison, Wisconsin to Sioux City, Iowa. And part of me wants to put his face, one of the faces looking out the window, So again, if you're asking my wife if she's seen strange things, if I'm serious about the other 495, no. You know why? Because wow, these things get really expensive. There's one of the bats that's available for $250, and I thought, no, I know how much you can get a Dave Bancroft 1971 Hall of Fame bat for, and $250 is much more. The weirdest piece of memorabilia that I actually considered, and it was only for a few seconds, was Dave Bancroft's, and I'm not making this up. I wish I was, but I'm not. This is Dave Bancroft's Social Security card from the 1950s, is on sale for $552 through an auction house. It was sold 3 years ago through the same auction house, but it has been put back on sale. I'm going to draw the line there. I don't think I need his Social Security card from the 1950s. At the same time, you know what? One of the wonderful things about getting to do it, there are very, very few people who still remember Dave and Edna. Edna died in 1984, so some people remember her a little bit more. And the story has gotten, I've been on Duluth Superior Radio, and the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel wrote something nice, and so that the Superior paper also picked that up. And so I've gotten response, and also on social media from Superior, and I've gotten people who remember walking the school and seeing Dave and Edna would sit and wave to them as they go by, and just describing a very nice couple. And these were obviously older people now, because these were school kids in the late 60s, and people who met them. And it's wonderful memories. There is no living relative. I did the hardest search thinking I would find one, and never did. And I expect at some point that I will. I did get a very distant nephew of Edna's, and he then sent me remarkable, and I can't find it in front of me right now. He sent me the Dave wrote the caption himself on a piece of paper 40 years after the photo was taken. The photo is of the $1 million infield of the New York Giants: Frankie Frisch, High Pockets Kelly, Heine Grohl, and Dave. But it's Dave's handwriting, signing in, left to right is, Frank Frisch, and I mean, one of the greatest infields of all time. And that's one of the memories he's kept, or one of the pieces of memorabilia that he has kept. The other one was, if you wonder what happened, this was from the Muscatine, am I pronouncing that right? Muscatine, Iowa newspaper in 1936. In 1936, this is an ad that was in the Muscatine Journal that summer, and it was asking kids if they wanted to have a baseball or join a baseball school, which did happen for a week. The instructors were Tris Speaker, George Sisler, Red Faber, Dave Bancroft, and Cy Young. So kids for just a penny. It just says, sign and return this ad if you're interested. So, 1936. Yeah, and ironically, that idea did not take off. It ended up only going to 2 Iowa towns. It was not successful, or it was not successful enough for him to the promoter to keep going. Apparently, with 5 legends of baseball for kids to enjoy for a week and learn from. So. Again, and that was, I might still be answering, I don't know if I'm still answering Dave's question, but you know what, that is, wow moments keep happening, and wow moments keep happening when I really went into this. If you look on Amazon, the price is set out of fear. It's very low. The Kindle price is $1.99. Your ebook is $1.99. Now, the irony of that is I make half of that. publisher gets a little, Amazon gets a little, and that's fine. I care much more about readers than I do about making some money. And that was why also the print edition of this book, which I highly suggest if you're interested in reading it, is set at $9.39. I wanted readers, and again, I was scared. I was scared that it would come and go. I experienced something where I thought, wow, the country music, there's a lot of country music fans out there. There's only one person selling 80,000 tickets right now in America, and that's Garth Brooks. And I thought, wow, get ready. We're going to start selling. And then it started very quickly and then really dropped off. One of the nice things about the Bancroft books is it just keeps going and going and going. And I hope to keep telling the story. I hope it keeps expanding along. That's why getting moments like this is part of the wow factor. The idea of making money on this. The next book, yes, I have an idea, and it's not a baseball book. It is a book that is, it's actually the autobiography of a woman who was a veterinarian for 55 or till she was 55, and she decided to become a medical doctor for people. And the last 20 years, that's what she has been doing in rural Oregon. And she is somebody I wrote about 20 years ago for a newspaper, and we're doing interviews. And that one, I desperately want a major publisher for that one. That one I think we might be able to break through. But I was warned. Lots of people, some big names in the business said, be careful. Baseball books. There's a lot of them out there. You're not gonna sell. And so out of fear, the price was set at a very low. And that, in retrospect, I'm very happy that it is, because to me, it's just like the hobby of running. No one has paid me a penny to run, but yet I've done it for years. It's a hobby that I just love. And to me, writing is a passion. And then too, when you get a subject like Dave Bancroft, and then that what will happen on July 1st is a plaque will be put up at the Lewis and Clark Park in Sioux City, Iowa, in honor of Dave Bancroft, and it just blows your mind. I mean, that's just at the city or Sioux City Council will meet 5 days before that and declare it Dave Bancroft Day. And I thought, yeah, he deserves it. Now the next step for me is I want to see something in Superior. I want a marker in Superior. I want the story to be told in Superior, and we're getting there. Gonna be done.
Tom, for when that plaque is put up, get a picture of it. Maybe do something, and we have to get this to the landmarks committee. There's a new landmarks committee that SABR is doing, and get that there as one of them. That's a landmark. That they'll want to have. Yeah. It's
like I said, there are 2 that I want to see. One down, one to go. Somewhere in Superior. They need to.
Maybe we can do a SABR project to raise the funds to do that one in Superior.
Magnificent. Yes.
Dixie had one other comment out here. According to Retro Sheet, he's saying Dave's first game against the Giants, Matty was out of the game by the time he got his first hit in the 4th inning, and that it was actually off of Ralph Sailor Stroud. No clue who that guy is, their first reliever.
I was looking at the box score from that. But I will definitely be looking back at that. That is fascinating. And once again, fascinating and cringing all at the same time. Because one of the first things I'll do when we get off of this is look at my notes are separated by year. It will take me very quick time to find that. It is, it's no doubt that his last one, when Dave Bancroft was the player manager of Boston, he took a shortstop named Bob Smith and said, we need pitchers and you've got a strong arm. And with the help of his assistant coach, he made Bob Smith a pitcher. Bob Smith then went on to pitch for the next 7 years in the major leagues. And Dave Bancroft's last at bat, the pitcher for the other team was Bob Smith, the guy who he turned into a pitcher, and who also got him the ground out on his last at bat. But no, I will, that is definitely something, you know, that's one of the things too, is that there was the SABR and the research of what people can come up with was invaluable. Things like that I'll check out into.
Tom, this has been a great pleasure. Susan, I'm a little worried for you. He's no, I love the passion.
She knows
it comes out in the book. And so this has been my pleasure just to meet you. And this has been very, very interesting. Any final questions from anybody else on here?
Thank you all really very much for, you know, obviously one of the things I told my wife was that I'm afraid that I will talk too much. But thank you all for listening. It's a very good audience tonight. Very enjoyable to me.
Yeah. Tom, my biggest worry when I set these up is, and especially with a person I don't know, I wonder how much they're going to talk. We're going to have to be pulling teeth. Yeah.
No, not with me.
Yeah, my pocketed questions, although you answered a lot of them, I never had to worry about them at all. So I always have questions ready, and never mind. Yeah, this was a pleasure. We're getting thanks, Tom, from John Strobush. Thanks from Jack. So it was this was very, very good. So thank you very much. Dave, your book will be on the way shortly. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.